Spring 1940. Rome. The marble halls of Palazzo Venezia absorbed sound like a tomb. Outside, the city moved with the rhythm of cafes and streetcars, unaware that inside these walls, a man was drowning. Benito Mussolini stood at his desk, alone. The room was vast, designed to make visitors feel small. But now it made him feel small. On the desk lay reports from the Ministry of War. Numbers. Cold, unforgiving numbers. Italy was not ready. The army lacked modern tanks. The Air Force had planes that belonged in museums. The Navy, though proud, was stretched thin across the Mediterranean. And the people, the Italian people, did not want war. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But across the Alps, Adolf Hitler was rewriting the map of Europe with terrifying speed. Poland had fallen in weeks. Denmark and Norway were German. And now, in May 1940, the Wehrmacht was tearing through France like a knife through silk. The French army, considered the finest in the world, was collapsing. Mussolini had watched from the sidelines. He had declared neutrality in September 1939, a decision that haunted him every day since. He called it non-belligerence, a word invented to save face. But everyone knew what it meant. Italy was afraid. And Mussolini, the man who had promised to restore the Roman Empire, was sitting on his hands while Hitler conquered Europe. The German ambassador visited often. Always polite. Always patient. Always with the same message: the Führer respects Italy's decision. But the war will not wait forever. Mussolini knew what that meant too. If Germany won without Italy, there would be no seat at the table. No spoils. No empire. Italy would be a spectator in its own century. But if Italy joined too late, it would be seen as opportunistic. Weak. A jackal following the lion. And if Italy joined too early, and Germany lost? Catastrophe. So Mussolini waited. And the waiting was killing him. Every morning, Mussolini received the same reports. German forces advancing. French forces retreating. British forces evacuating. He would read them, then walk to the window. From there, he could see the Roman Forum, the ruins of an empire that had once ruled the world. He wanted that back. He had promised that back. But how? His foreign minister, Count Galeazzo Ciano, urged caution. Ciano was young, ambitious, married to Mussolini's daughter. He had access no one else did. And he was terrified. "We are not ready," Ciano said, again and again. "Our generals say we need 3 more years. 3 more years." Mussolini would slam his fist on the desk. "In 3 years, the war will be over. And we will have nothing." The king, Victor Emmanuel III, said little. He was a small man, quiet, cautious. He did not trust Mussolini. He did not trust Hitler. But he also did not stop anything. The Italian people, meanwhile, went about their lives. They read newspapers that praised the regime. They attended rallies. They cheered when told to cheer. But in private, in homes and cafes, they whispered, "Why should we fight Germany's war? What do we gain from this? My son is not ready to die for Hitler." Mussolini knew this. He read the intelligence reports. He knew the people were not with him. But he also knew that empires were not built by waiting for permission. In late May, the German army reached the English Channel. France was finished. It was only a matter of time. Mussolini called a meeting of his military chiefs. They sat around a long table, uniforms pressed, faces grim. "How soon can we be ready?" Mussolini asked. The generals exchanged glances. "Ready for what, Duce?" one asked. "For war." Silence. Finally, the army chief spoke. "If we mobilize now, we can have forces on the French border in 2 weeks. But Duce, the French are already defeated. What would we be fighting for?" Mussolini leaned forward. "For our place in history." The generals said nothing. They knew better than to argue. June 10, 1940. The day was warm. Rome shimmered under the afternoon sun. Crowds began gathering in Piazza Venezia hours before the announcement. They did not know what Mussolini would say, but they knew it would be important. Inside Palazzo Venezia, Mussolini stood before a mirror, adjusting his uniform. He had written the speech himself. Short, direct, historic. Ciano stood nearby, pale. "It is not too late to reconsider," Ciano said quietly. Mussolini did not look at him. "It is already done." At 6 p.m., Mussolini stepped onto the balcony. The crowd below erupted. Thousands of voices, roaring. He raised his hand, and they fell silent. Fighters of land, sea, and air. Black shirts of the revolution and of the legions. Men and women of Italy, of the Empire, and of the Kingdom of Albania. "Listen!" His voice echoed across the square. "An hour marked by destiny strikes in the sky of our country. The hour of irrevocable decisions. The declaration of war has already been handed to the ambassadors of Great Britain and France." The crowd exploded. Cheering. Applause. Flags waving. But not everyone cheered. In the back of the crowd, an old man stood still, arms crossed. He had fought in the last war. He knew what this meant. In a cafe nearby, a mother clutched her son's hand. He was 17. Old enough. In the American embassy, a young diplomat named Harold listened to the speech on the radio. He took notes, his hand steady. "Italy has entered the war," he wrote. "God help them." June 21, 1940. Alpine border between Italy and France. The Italian army had been advancing for 11 days. 11 days of climbing frozen mountain passes. 11 days of pushing through snow that should not have been there in June. 11 days of fighting an enemy that was already beaten, but refused to act like it. Captain Marco Bellini stood at the edge of a ridge, looking down at the valley below. His unit, 300 men, had been ordered to take a French fortification near Menton, a small town on the Mediterranean coast. They had not taken it. The French, outnumbered and abandoned by their own high command, had held their ground. Every bunker, every trench, every meter of frozen earth. Bellini's men were exhausted, cold, hungry, and confused. "Why are we even here?" a young soldier had asked that morning. Bellini had no answer. The war was already over. France had signed an armistice with Germany the day before, in a railway car in the forest of Compiègne. Hitler had orchestrated the ceremony as an act of revenge, forcing the French to surrender in the same place Germany had surrendered in 1918. But Italy had not been invited. Mussolini had begged Hitler for a seat at the table. He had sent telegrams, dispatches, pleading messages. He wanted to march into Paris. He wanted to stand beside the Führer as a conqueror. Hitler had refused. "Italy's contribution has been noted," the German foreign minister had said politely. "But the armistice is a matter between Germany and France." So Mussolini had ordered his generals to push harder. To take something, anything, that could be called a victory. And now, Bellini and his men were dying for it. A runner arrived, breathless, covered in snow. "Captain." "Orders from command." Bellini took the paper, unfolded it. His hands were numb. "Cease all offensive operations. Armistice with France effective immediately. Hold positions." He read it twice. Then he looked at his men. They were scattered along the ridge, huddled in groups, trying to stay warm. Some were smoking. Some were sleeping. One was writing a letter home. Bellini folded the paper and put it in his pocket. "What does it say?" his lieutenant asked. Bellini looked at him. Then he looked back at the valley. "It says we're done." The lieutenant frowned. "Done? We haven't taken the position." "No. We haven't." Silence. The lieutenant waited for more, but Bellini said nothing. He just stood there, staring at the valley, at the French bunkers that had held against them for 11 days. Finally, the lieutenant spoke. "What do we tell the men?" Bellini turned to face him. His expression was flat. "Empty. Tell them we won." That night, the men gathered around small fires, passing around what little food they had. Someone had found a bottle of wine. They shared it, taking small sips, trying to make it last. No one spoke about the armistice. No one spoke about the French. No one spoke about victory. They just sat there, in the cold, waiting for orders to go home. Bellini sat apart from them, his back against a rock. He pulled out the letter he had been carrying for weeks, a letter from his wife. He had read it so many times the paper was soft, almost fragile. "Come home safe, Marco. That is all I ask. Come home." He folded it carefully and put it back in his pocket. Then he looked up at the sky. The stars were bright, impossibly bright, the way they only are in the mountains. He thought about the men he had lost. 4 dead. 12 wounded. For what? For 11 days of snow and silence. For a war that had ended before they even arrived. For a seat at a table they were never invited to. June 24, 1940. Rome. Mussolini sat in his office, reading the terms of the armistice. Italy would occupy a narrow strip of French territory, barely 20 miles deep. No major cities. No strategic ports. Just mountains and snow. Germany, meanwhile, controlled the rest. Paris. The industrial heartland. The Atlantic coast. Mussolini set the paper down. Ciano entered the room, cautious. "The people are celebrating, Duce. They believe we have won." Mussolini did not look at him. "Have we?" Ciano hesitated. "We are at the table. That is what you wanted." Mussolini finally turned to face him. His expression was unreadable. "We are at the table," he repeated slowly. "But we are not eating." Ciano said nothing. Mussolini stood and walked to the window. Below, crowds were still gathered in Piazza Venezia, waving flags, chanting his name. He watched them for a long time. Then he spoke, almost to himself. "We have entered a war we cannot win. Against enemies we cannot defeat. For a cause that is not ours." Ciano shifted uncomfortably. "Then why?" "Because," Mussolini interrupted, his voice cold, "history does not remember those who wait." He turned away from the window. "It remembers those who act. Even if they fail." Across the Atlantic, in Washington, D.C., Harold, the young diplomat, filed his report. Italy's entry into the war has accomplished little militarily. But it has accomplished something far more dangerous. It has committed Italy to a path it cannot escape. Mussolini has tied his fate to Hitler's. And when Hitler falls, Italy will fall with him. He sealed the envelope and handed it to a courier. Then he sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "God help them," he said again. September 1940. Washington, D.C. 3 months had passed since Italy declared war. Harold sat in a small office at the State Department, surrounded by reports. Maps covered the walls: Europe, North Africa, the Mediterranean. Red pins marked Italian positions. Black pins marked German advances. He had been tracking Italy's war effort since June. And what he saw disturbed him. Italy had attacked British positions in North Africa. The offensive had stalled within weeks. Italian forces, poorly supplied and poorly led, were now dug in along the Libyan border, waiting for reinforcements that never seemed to arrive. In the Mediterranean, the Italian navy, once considered formidable, had suffered humiliating losses. British torpedo bombers had crippled half the fleet at Taranto. The rest stayed in port, afraid to venture out. And now, Mussolini was preparing to invade Greece. Harold read the intelligence report again, hoping he had misunderstood. He hadn't. "Why Greece?" his supervisor asked, leaning against the doorframe. Harold looked up. Because Mussolini needs a victory. Any victory. He promised the Italian people an empire. So far, all he's given them is snow and defeat. And he thinks Greece will be different. Harold shook his head. No. I think he knows it won't be. But he has no choice. If he doesn't act, Hitler will lose faith in him. And if Hitler loses faith, Italy becomes irrelevant. His supervisor was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. Write it up. The president needs to know. October 28, 1940. Albanian-Greek border. It was raining. Captain Bellini stood in the mud, watching his men prepare for the assault. They had been transferred from the French front to Albania, a miserable, mountainous country that Italy had occupied the year before. Now they were being ordered to invade Greece. Bellini had read the orders 3 times, hoping they would change. They didn't. The plan was simple: cross the border, overwhelm the Greek defenses, and march to Athens within 2 weeks. Mussolini had personally approved the operation. He wanted to surprise Hitler, to prove that Italy could win wars without German help. But Bellini knew better. The Greeks were not the French. They were not exhausted. They were not divided. And they were fighting on their own soil. Captain. Bellini turned. His lieutenant stood beside him, rain dripping from his helmet. The men are ready. Bellini nodded slowly. Ready for what? The lieutenant frowned. For the attack, sir. Bellini looked at him. Then he looked at the men, cold, wet, exhausted. Some of them were the same soldiers who had fought in the Alps. They had survived that. Barely. Tell them to rest, Bellini said. We move at dawn. The attack began as planned. Italian forces crossed the border in multiple columns, advancing through rain and mud. The Greeks fell back, slowly, methodically, drawing the Italians deeper into the mountains. Then they struck. Greek counterattacks came from every direction, fast, brutal, coordinated. Italian units, stretched thin and poorly supplied, collapsed under the pressure. Within 2 weeks, the invasion had failed. Within a month, the Greeks had pushed the Italians back into Albania. Bellini's unit was among the survivors. They retreated through the same mountains they had advanced through, leaving behind equipment, supplies, and bodies. One night, as they camped in a frozen valley, Bellini sat alone, staring at a small fire. His lieutenant approached, hesitant. Captain. The men are asking questions. Bellini didn't look up. What questions? They want to know why we're here. Why we're fighting. Bellini was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because someone in Rome decided we should. The lieutenant waited for more. But there was nothing more. December 1940. Rome. Mussolini sat at his desk, reading casualty reports. 13,000 dead. 25,000 wounded. 50,000 suffering from frostbite. And the Greeks were still advancing. Hitler had sent a message. It was polite. Respectful. But the meaning was clear. Germany will assist Italy and Greece. Preparations are underway. Mussolini crumpled the paper and threw it across the room. Ciano entered quietly. He had aged in the past 6 months. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. The Germans are sending troops, Ciano said. I know. They will take over the campaign. I know. Ciano hesitated. Duce, the people are losing faith. Mussolini looked at him, his expression hard. The people do not matter. What matters is that we are still in the war. But at what cost? Mussolini stood, his voice rising. At whatever cost is necessary. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to beg Hitler for help? Do you think I wanted to watch our army humiliated in the snow? He slammed his fist on the desk. I wanted glory. I wanted empire. I wanted Rome to rise again. Ciano said nothing. Mussolini's voice dropped, cold and bitter. But instead, we are Hitler's servant. And we will remain his servant until this war ends. He turned away, staring out the window at the city below. And when it ends, he said quietly, we will pay for everything. January 1941. Washington, D.C. Harold finished his report and set down his pen. Italy's entry into the war has proven disastrous. Militarily, economically, and politically, the country is collapsing. Mussolini's gamble has failed. He sought to stand beside Hitler as an equal. Instead, he has become a burden. The Italian people, once enthusiastic, are now disillusioned. The army is demoralized. The economy is strained. And the future is uncertain. But the most important consequence is this: Italy is now trapped. It cannot leave the war without betraying Germany. And it cannot win the war without Germany's help. Mussolini has locked his country into a conflict it cannot escape. History will not be kind to this decision. He sealed the report and handed it to his supervisor. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the city, peaceful, distant, untouched by war. He thought about Captain Bellini, somewhere in the mountains of Albania, freezing in the snow. He thought about the Italian soldiers, dying for a cause they didn't understand. He thought about Mussolini, sitting in his palace, watching his empire crumble. And he thought about the moment, June 10, 1940, when everything changed. One speech. One decision. One man's desperate attempt to be remembered. And an entire nation paying the price. Harold turned away from the window. God help them, he whispered one last time.